Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butts-Chester. You guys know who I am, and you know what I like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about our topic. Today, we'll be talking about when God rewrites the script. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea because we are about to get started. Hello, beautiful ones. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. Welcome, welcome, welcome to today. I am so happy to be with you today. No matter where you are listening in the world, I hope that your day is going as good as mine. Now, we are stepping into a topic that I think hits home for a lot of people at various points, stages, and phases of their lives. When God rewrites the script, that means that you thought you were going in one direction, but God says plot twist, and you end up going in a different direction, and it is all for the good. Now, we know that life doesn't always unfold the way that we imagine. We plan, we prepare, and then suddenly the page turns and the story looks nothing like what we had in mind. But here's the good news. God never makes edits without purpose. So grab your coffee, let's get our tea, and let's talk about the topic. Because today we're going to talk about what it means to trust in the author of life, what it means to take the story in a new direction. You know, everyone, we are going to talk about the unexpected plot twist. Now, it's funny, of course, in hindsight, when God does this to us. We don't always think it funny in the moment, right? But looking back, how many of you have experienced a God-given plot twist? I know that I have. And I have an example of a really good one. Now, if you've been following my story, then you know that I told you that I used to do a podcast. I don't do that particular podcast anymore, but I started off doing a particular podcast talking about mental health. And one day I prayed a very simple prayer, and it was, Lord, I'd really like to be on radio. I think that I could be. And that was it. I left it there. Now, fast forward a few years from the time of that prayer, and I get a phone call. Dr. Angela, we've been following what you're doing with your podcast, and we'd like to extend a radio program to you. Now, I said, wow, this is exactly what I've been praying for. Now, when it comes time to name the show, they tell me that it would be a weekly show. Gotcha. Well, let me pray about it, and if you don't mind, I'll let you know tomorrow. Of course, she says. Well, the next day, I tell her the name of the show, Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. Dr. Angela, your show will be weekly. Is that going to be okay? Absolutely. But the show will still be called Daily Spark. With that being said, I went from being a weekly show to being a daily show in just under a year's time. Now, here is the plot twist. After that year, the presentation was given to me of having a television spinoff. I never prayed for television, but yet television was the perfect next step. That was the unexpected positive plot twist that God had in store for me. So I want to perhaps take you down the road, help you along your journey of the unexpected positive plot twist that God has in store for you. So Let's start here. Have you ever had life throw you a curveball? Maybe you were sure you'd be on that job forever, or that friendship would always be strong, or that opportunity was yours for the taking. And then something shifted. Now, those things might sound negative, but they don't have to be negative. Sure, you thought you would have that job forever, but you ended up getting a promotion that opened more doors and allowed for more opportunity. You thought that friendship was strong, but come to find out that friend wasn't as friendly as you thought, and God showed you for your betterment. That opportunity was yours for the taking, but something better came along. There we are. The shift happens more times than we realize. It's many times happening in the background. Now, I'd like to call that a plot twist, as I'm sure many of you would as well. But in God's story, it's never random. The Bible reminds us in Proverbs 16:9, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. That means even when your plan changes, the purpose doesn't. Here's what I've learned in my own walk. The moment you surrender your timeline, God begins to reveal his divine one. And through the transition, it may be a little uncomfortable, but through it all, it will turn out to be quite sacred because you've been positioned for something that fits your calling better than the things you've lost. Let me make sure that I point out three things for you here. Every divine redirection is tied to purpose. Never think that it is haphazard, that it is random, that it's just something happening. But it is God gently, purposefully moving you in a new direction for something bigger and or better. Far too often, we as humans hold too tightly onto the thing that we have in present because we can't see the future. So many times God has to tickle our hand, nudge us just a bit, send someone that we trust. And if all of that does not work, he will send a stranger. He will send an animal. He will send someone to even irritate you to get you moving. So just remember, every divine redirection is tied to purpose. God also edits, and God's edits are never about punishment. They're about preparation. I remember hearing a parent talk about their adult child. And that parent said, "This boy has had so many jobs. Oh my goodness. It's like he doesn't know what he's doing. He's all over the place. You would think at this older age that he would have figured it out by now. My goodness." Now, the parent, a well-established individual, and had made a very good name for his family, didn't understand why his son wasn't able to hold down a good job. Now, many of you may be thinking along the same lines as many people do. Well, was he on drugs? Did he have an attitude problem? Was he undisciplined? What's going on with him? Why couldn't he hold down a job? Come to find out, you know why he couldn't hold down a job? Because he wasn't meant to hold down those jobs. So in a 10-year period, he had about 12 or 13 different jobs. He only stayed on the job anywhere between 9 months to a year and did several different type of work. With that being said, fast forward about 4 or 5 years. Make a long story short there. You know why he had to have all of those jobs? Because he ended up going into ministry. And when he went into ministry, he was able to minister to the types of people that he had previously worked with. That gave him an inside track. It gave him information that was only privy to those who had done the work. He was able to speak to people at their core, at their heart, and allow him to have that more personal conversation with them, to let them know that he understood their plight, what they were going through. So in all of that, it took someone like me and like many of you to pose the answer to that parent's question in a way that made sense. If you think about all of those jobs, he was doing on the job training. He was doing out in the field work. It was research. He was writing the paper from a very personal, real, live perspective. With all of that knowledge that he gained in that window, he is now excelling working in ministry because he's able to relate better to people. So many times as parents, we think that we know what is best, but God is our ultimate Father. And in his divine wisdom, he is able to guide us where sometimes our human parents, even ourselves, we don't quite see yet. Another thing that I want to point out is that peace comes from understanding that God's pen doesn't make mistakes. Now, we are all old enough here to remember whiteout, be it that it was the paper, the liquid paper corrector, or it was the roll-on version. But we've all lived a life that has experienced one form or another. We now, using our laptops and phones, simply go back, right? That wonderful back arrow. But in making an error, we also understand that we are human. And that means that we will make faults from time to time. Isn't it good to know that God's pen doesn't make mistakes? He doesn't have to scratch out and rewrite. It is simply perfect the first time. So if you're in that season right now of where things feel uncertain or even unfair, remember that you're not being erased. You're not being striked through. You're being rewritten. Alrighty, everyone, it is time for us to take a very short break, but when we get back, we will continue this conversation. We'll be back right after this.
Discovery. No, just a sec.
What would it look like if we listened more? Could the right voice, the right set of words, bring us all just a little closer? Get us to open up, even push us further? It could, if we took the time to listen. The most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories. Download Audible and listen for a change.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Butch-Chester. You know, learning to let go of the old can be difficult, but let's prepare to do that. I want you to picture something for a moment. Imagine you're holding onto a script, your life story, perfectly outlined in your mind. And then God says, that's beautiful, but let me take it from here. Wow. That's the hard part, isn't it? The letting go. because letting go of control feels like letting go of stability. Psalm 37:23 through 24 say it this way: The steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in their way. Though they fall, they shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds them with his hand. Letting go doesn't mean failing. It means trusting that even in the stumble, God's hand is steady. So if you are experiencing that, I want you to remember to release what doesn't feel right. I want you to release what doesn't feel proper and true. And remember that release doesn't mean defeat. Remember that when God removes something, he's making room for something better. And sometimes obedience looks like silence, waiting for the next line. When God rewrote my own story so many years ago, I didn't understand at first. I didn't see why that was happening, but I understood that it had to be a God rewrite. When I thought what was the ending of one thing, it actually was the divine in the works. That was my breast cancer journey. It was hard to let my practice go so that I could spend time healing. But once I was back, boy, did I get the pressed down, running over. It was wonderful. And you know what? The new version is richer, fuller, and more purposeful than I could have ever written on my own. So maybe you need to remember that today, that it's okay to close the old chapter. The same God who began the story is still writing. Divine edits and holy interpretation. Now, let's talk about these divine interpretations, as well as these divine interruptions. Have you ever been in a flow? Things are going well, plans are moving smoothly, and suddenly God says, pause. Oh, wow. A divine interruption for a divine interpretation. It's frustrating sometimes, right? But sometimes that interruption is the instruction. If God does not interrupt you in the busyness of being you, you will not get your divine inspiration. Think about Joseph. He dreamed of leadership, but found himself in a pit. Then in prison, before reaching the palace. Each pause, each plot twist was a divine edit. It was a divine interruption, preparing him for what was ahead. Now, God's timing refines what our ambition might rush. Learning to slow down and to take our journey in pace is important. Interruptions protect us from premature evaluations. So many times we are tempted to take just a taste when it isn't done yet. You would not taste that chicken if it were not fully cooked, would you? Absolutely not, because you know that it would make you sick. Yet we go through life sticking our finger in the chicken. We can't do that. We should learn to allow it to cook fully to proper temperature before we take a taste. Interruption protects us from that premature evaluation. It protects us from that sickness, that illness that might actually harm us and ultimately derail us. We need to learn that the pause is where character deepens. If you happen to have a garden of any sort, you know that you do not get your produce or your flowers overnight. Though that would be awesome, wouldn't it? But we don't get it overnight. We must wait the days, the weeks, the months in order for it to start to be the beautiful plant that it was meant to be. And sometimes, before we see it in its full glory, we might even have to wait years for a flowering plant to come into full maturity. Patience. Patience. Isaiah 55 verses 8 and 9 remind us this way. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declare the Lord. So, if your story feels paused, it doesn't mean it's forgotten. It means God is protecting you and perfecting the next scene before he lets you walk into it. Let that encourage you today. Divine edits don't erase your destiny. They prepare you. They prepare you to meet it with maturity and with grace. So, how do we stay encouraged while waiting? That's a really good question. And it's a question that many people ask along the way. Here are some practical ways to stay anchored while God is rewriting your script. Number 1, stay in prayer, not panic. Let's say that again. Stay in prayer, my beautiful sparker, not in panic. When uncertainty rises, shift the energy into conversation with God. Stop speaking the doom and gloom that you feel over your life and the situation. Don't reiterate the negativity. Speak the positivity. I know some people are going to say, girl, you are so delusional. You need to live in reality. Well, the reality is that as a king's kid, I have the victory. So let me speak victory over my life, my lifestyle, my friends, my family, my business, and my church, over everything that I do. So it is okay to stay in prayer and not in panic. Number 2, surround yourself with faith-filled voices. Now, you don't need everyone to understand your rewrite. That's a great point to make, right? You don't need everyone to understand your rewrite. You just need a few people who will remind you that God is still in control. Now, if you're the personality types that likes to have a lot of friends, I mean, every weekend is like a party for you, that number of people, that's fine. Don't get me wrong, that's fine. But you only need to have a table worth of friends that are going to always encourage you. And you can determine the size of that table. Be it that it's a big rounder that seats 8 to 10 people, or it's a more modest size that perhaps seats 6. Or you can decide that it is a personal table for 2. Whatever size you decide, just make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people that are going to be your cheerleader. But they are going to be your cheerleader with a God perspective. Sure, they might ask you a tough question every now and again here and there, but not from a place of malice, not with a malicious tone, but one that is God inspired. that they are asking you because God is nudging you back onto the path, keeping you on course. Surround yourself with faith-filled voices, faith-filled friends. Number 3, reflect, but don't rehearse. Don't keep replaying what you've lost. Reflect on what you have learned. That's where I think many people get stuck. They keep rehearsing the loss, the doom, the gloom. No, you reflect on it. This is what happened. This is what I've learned. And this is how I am moving forward. No need to keep beating that dear horse. Learn the lesson and move forward. And most importantly, stay grateful. Gratitude keeps your spirit open to what God is creating next. Romans 8:28 ties it all together this way. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Even when the story takes an unexpected turn, it is all part of his plan for your good. So remember, God doesn't waste a word or a wound. You are still the main character in his story. And the rewrite is proof that he's not finished with you yet. Everyone, I just want to encourage you to continue to walk the path that God has in store for you. So today, I want you to hold on to this truth. God is still holding the pen. You don't have to understand every edit, but you should trust the author. When God rewrites the script, he isn't erasing your story, he's expanding it. Thank you for understanding that God can, will, and continues to be the master author. Alrighty, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that we have once again enlightened, inspired, and empowered you. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.